Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll say welcome to our guest, Peter Mount Shasta. He'll be speaking on the violet Tara. Is
Tara.
it Tara?
Tara. Yeah.
Tara in action. I'm looking forward to this. Teachings on self-mastery. Thank you, Peter.
Good. That's the title of my new book. The first one, I Am Violet Tara. And then the second one just came out, I Am Violet Tara in Action, Lessons in Mastery. And light is a food, it is a nutrition, and it has certain effects too. So all the colors are in the white light, and you don't see them most of the time, unless in the morning you look at a drop of dew on the blade of grass, and you see these beautiful rainbow colors, and then you realize, wow, these colors are there all the time. Again, you look at the rainbow, all these colors are there all the time, but we only see the rainbow when the light hits the raindrops in the sky at a certain angle to us. But the story is that there are 21 Taras. So Tara is really the goddess energy. Tara means the female Buddha, the enlightened Buddha, the divine enlightened feminine aspect of creation. So when you think that the pure white light is the divine mother, and she contains all those colors within her, it's really quite amazing. So one day I was at a friend's house, and I was about to say goodbye, and all of a sudden I saw Saint Germain standing behind him, not in a physical body, in an etheric body. And we were not even talking about spiritual things at that point. And Saint Germain gave me this smile, and he said, I want you to write about the violet Tara. And then he winked like that, and then he disappeared. Well, in that 1 second, he transmitted the entire book to me, but not word for word. He transmitted the concepts. This is what's called mind-to-mind transmission. That was my first book, I Am the Violet Tara. Now you have to understand, in Tibetan Buddhism, there's the concept of what they call a Yidam, Y-I-D-A-M. A Yidam is a meditational deity. In other words, this was not a historical person. They have many deities that were not born ever on the earth in physical bodies or born even in any dimension. They are aspects of consciousness. So this is quite an amazing concept. You could call it a thought form, but what is a thought form? A thought form can become very real. A thought form can become so real, it can manifest even in physical form. And the Tibetans work quite a bit with this. In fact, that is how some of the ascended masters will precipitate many other forms of themselves. And this is through the power of the mind. So when you understand the concept of a Yidam, it's really quite amazing. There's some of these beings that are worshipped, like in the Orient, Kuan Yin is worshipped. Now, we don't know exactly when she was born. In some cultures, Kuan Yin is a male. The important thing is she is the embodiment of compassion, as are really all of the Taras. So Kuan Yin can become very, very real. So there are many actual deities that really were not born in physical form, but they are aspects of ourselves. So this is actually very helpful, because many people have a hard time praying to God in the abstract. You know, what does God look like? I grew up thinking of God as the old guy in the white beard sitting on the cloud on the roof of the Sistine Chapel in Rome. You know, that's how we think of God. And then, of course, his son was Jesus, you know. So, well, I could think of that. But then after a while, I said, wait a minute, you know, that was just a painting. God is not an old man sitting on a cloud. God is everywhere all the time. And what about God the Mother also? But it's hard for some people. If you're going to pray to God, you like to have a form. What does that form look like? So some people would maybe like to see a human with an elephant head. You know, was that a real being? And if that really excites you to see that, then you can worship that form. Most people choose to worship a form of God that they can most relate to. So to some people, that might be a goddess. To other people, it might be a god. Like the Greeks and Romans had whole pantheons of gods. They may never have actually been physical beings, like Bacchus or Dionysus. Were they actually real people? It's nice to think if you're going to drink wine that there's a god of wine, you know, and you can toast to him when you drink wine. Anyway, we have these different goddesses, these different Taras, and they have different qualities. And the more you dwell on them and see them as real gods, the more powerful they become. So to me, I always thought Green Tara was sort of an imaginary being. That's how I thought of her, until I heard of a lama that actually fell in a river and almost drowned, and he said Green Tara pulled him out. Well, that's quite real. That's because he was totally dedicated to that aspect of God. So now we go back to violet Tara, and of course that invokes violet light and the violet flame. And I used to notice when I meditated, or when I was in a group of people meditating, out of the corner of my eye, I would see violet light without my invoking it. This is before I even studied the teachings of Saint Germain. And I've talked to other people also would see that. So when there's a very high frequency in the room, sometimes you see that violet light. So for many, many years after I contacted the Saint Germain teachings, the I Am teachings that are in Unveiled Mysteries and the Magic Presence and the I Am discourses, I would call forth the violet consuming flame, which is the most purifying quality of light. It burns up negativity, human thought forms, things like that, and raises everything into a higher state. And then I started thinking, you know, Saint Germain is really quite busy. Maybe every time I want to invoke the violet flame, maybe I don't need to call on him personally, that I can invoke it myself. Well, where is that violet flame coming from? It's coming from my own I Am presence, my God self. So when Saint Germain asked me to write about this, I realized he wanted us to learn how to invoke that violet consuming flame from our own source, from the God presence. That he is trying to teach us to become masters. And the way you do that is by calling forth the different divine attributes of your own self. You know, instead of calling on this master or that master to do things, we learn to be the masters by invoking this light ourselves. So the violet Tara is a way to do this. In a sense, Saint Germain gets his violet fire from violet Tara too, because violet Tara is simply the personification of the violet consuming flame, which is an aspect really of yourself, because you are a God being. There is no limit to your consciousness. We are like the grains of salt on the shore of the ocean. We see ourselves as separate beings. I see a grain of salt here, another one there. But actually, we came out of the ocean of consciousness, and we will go back into that ocean again, and we won't see the differences anymore. So we are all really unlimited consciousness. And we can call that forth the same way Saint Germain does and all the other ascended masters, by invoking that. And first you tune in to the I am presence, which means going into the center of your being and just feeling that I am the presence of the living God. And you just feel that, the stillness. If you have trouble stilling your mind, just observe the in-breath and the out-breath. The rise and fall of your chest. And if a thought comes up, just label that thought or thinking, come back to the breath. And you let your awareness center around the center of your chest. And just feel the presence of God is in the center of your chest, is within you. And you can even say, I am the presence of God here and now. This is not an ego thing. You don't go around telling people, I am the presence of God. You just feel it and you see God in them also. Let's just take a minute to feel that presence. You can see it as a sun, if you like, a golden sun radiating into space. And your body becomes translucent like a crystal. But in this case, it's going to be an amethyst. The golden sun is within you, and your body is an amethyst, radiating violet light out to the earth. I've already skipped ahead of myself here because you've already become the violet Tara. So I am going to give you the whole practice here, how to invoke violet Tara. You're going to see violet Tara emerge in front of you and see her as a real person, someone who loves you infinitely and knows all about you and who you love. She is actually an aspect of yourself that you've never met before, but you're going to call her forth and ask her to bless humanity. And as you seek to bless others, you are blessed also. So gradually what's going to happen, she's going to become more and more real, and then she merges with you. And then you feel you are Violet Tara. And as Violet Tara, you can do affirmations and decrees to send her consciousness wherever you want. Then gradually you dissolve that and you go back to just your empty awareness, egoless, timeless awareness. And then at the very end, before you end the meditation, you can ask her to sit above your head and go before you throughout the whole week, blessing everyone you meet. But you gradually get to know her. And we have a group on Facebook, a Violet Tara group, And people have shared their experiences with Violet Tara, and it's really quite amazing. My own first experience with her came out actually the night that my book became a bestseller on Amazon. It went to like #1 on the Amazon bestseller list. I had a toothache that night, and I thought of going to the emergency room. It was so painful. I've never had a toothache before, but this one was excruciating. And then I heard this voice. It might have been Saint Germain, it might have been my own I Am Presence saying, Peter, you just wrote a book about calling Violet Tara into action. Here's your opportunity to prove that it works. So for an hour, I lay on my back, calling on Violet Tara to come forth, and I visualized my jaw as an amethyst and the light pouring in. Then I fell asleep, and when I woke up in the morning, the pain was gone. And over the next couple of weeks, I kept working on it, and now my jaw and teeth are perfect. So, and I've heard many other stories now of people that have taken this seriously and have invoked it. So there's absolutely no reason we can't use this in our daily lives for our own health and for the health of others. So I'm going to give you the practice now, and it's really quite simple. And this is in the book, I Am the Violet Tara, and I elaborated in the second book, I Am Violet Tara in Action. So we start out with the request for empowerment to Saint Germain. So this is all the Tibetan practices, invocations, start out with a request for empowerment. Generally, you would go to a lama who has received permission from his guru to give the empowerment. But Saint Germain, this is his pet project, and he's overseeing this. So as the master of the seventh ray, which is the violet ray, we're going to ask him to empower us to do this practice. Beloved Master Saint Germain, please empower this deity and make her real. Manifest the Violet Tara in my life right now, fully self-sustained as a living goddess for the benefit of all. Then invoke the goddess Tara, who is now present and fully aware of you. So this is the invocation of Violet Tara. You are talking now to the goddess. O great Violet Tara, beloved Divine Mother, you who are an emanation of the light from the heart of creation with which I am one, I implore you, release your violet fire of purification through my mind, feelings, and world. Purify and transmute wherever needed this very moment. Thank you, for I know it is done. Now comes the practice where we actually become Violet Tara. Dedicate this practice for the benefit of humanity. Go into a state of peaceful awareness, free of thoughts, allowing your mind to settle in the soft spot near your heart. See yourself seated in a beautiful amethyst temple with amethyst pillars and a floor of white marble. Outside the temple stand the lords of the 10 directions. In the sky surrounding this temple are the 7 mighty Chohans of the rays. They are representatives on earth of the 7 spirits of creation. Repeat inwardly, I am Violet Tara, silently to yourself. Then you can say the mantra, I am Tara of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. I am Tara of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. I am Tara of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. I am Violet Tara, radiant goddess from the heart of creation. I am pouring forth love, purity, wisdom, and forgiveness wherever needed, transmuting everything into its inherent perfection and bringing God's divine plan to earth this very moment. So be it. Now, maintain simultaneously your focus on the flame in the center of your chest and also Violet Tara before you. Feel the rays of violet light radiate from her heart to yours. More and more love pours forth from her to you. She forgives you unconditionally and feels your love and gratitude to her. Her love becomes more and more intense until she dissolves completely in violet light. She merges with your own heart, mind, body, and soul. Now you are Violet Tara. Rays of violet light pour forth from your third eye, your heart, the palms of your hands, radiating in all directions, throughout all dimensions and all universes. You are now the goddess at the center of creation. If you wish, you may hold out your hands and transmit the violet light and visualize violet fire going where you wish. This is what the Tibetans call mantra, mudra, and visualization. The mantra is, I am Violet Tara, I am the purity God desires. The mudra, you raise your hands, transmit the blessing, and the visualization is of yourself as Violet Tara. Now, your grace, forgiveness, and purification raise all beings into their innate perfection. Use your power to dissolve and consume all imperfection, ignorance, suffering, and disease immediately. So while we are in this state of merging with Violet Tara, we are Violet Tara. Let us purify humanity and the earth. I am Violet Tara, dissolving and consuming all cause of sickness, healing all who are sick, and raising everyone into their perfected state right this very moment. See the entire earth enveloped in the violet consuming flame. The earth becomes like an amethyst with the sun in the center and rays of dazzling light radiating through the earth out into space, sending violet rays out into space. This is not just happening in our minds, because we are one with all. The violet light, the violet consuming flame, is actually at this moment radiating through the earth. I am Tara of the violet fire. I am the purity God desires. Now you can see yourself as the goddess of violet fire above the earth. And you hold up your hands and you send rays of violet light from the palms of your hands down to the earth. A ray of violet light from your third eye and another from your heart. And you pick out spots on the earth where it is needed. I am the violet consuming flame blazing through Washington, D.C., dissolving and consuming all imperfections, all wrong thought forms, all illness, all negative thoughts and feelings, raising all into their perfection this moment. I am blazing the violet consuming flame through all the governments and capitals of the earth. I am blazing the violet consuming flame through all hospitals, healing the sick, raising them into their perfection this moment. I call on Violet Tara to be fully self-sustained over all hospitals. So after this meditation, there will be an emanation of Violet Tara established over all hospitals. And we call on Saint Germain and the other ascended masters to fully sustain this activity. The violet consuming flame is also called the fire of forgiveness. So we can call on the violet flame to come forth between all governments and all peoples, dissolving and consuming all discord, all anger, all resentment, and causing all people to forgive each other so that we can live in peace on Mother Earth. So I am going to stay in the silence for a while and let us all continue this meditation on our own. This is a great service we can perform at this moment for humanity. I am gradually now going to dissolve this visualization, although later you may all wish to continue it. This is a great service that you can render. And we are at this moment affecting all of humanity because we are all linked in consciousness. Gradually dissolve the goddess aspect of yourself and return to non-conceptual self-awareness. You can open your eyes a bit and observe the space before you. Remain in non-conceptual awareness, knowing that all others on the earth are also aspects of yourself. You are also one with the ascended masters, who are your older brothers and sisters. You feel calm and peaceful, filled with the nectar of the goddess. Her energy is within you, radiating through every cell in your body and blessing others from now on wherever you go. You can actually feel this light in your cells, cleansing and purifying the cells of your body. If you wish, as an option, you may take this realization a step further at the conclusion of the practice by asking Violet Tara to reside above you. Visualize her seated on a moon disk, resting on a sun disk. That's like a flat moon disk sitting on a disk of the sun, inside a lotus blossom above your head. So there's a beautiful pink lotus above your head, and within that, a moon and sun disk, and the goddess is seated there. Ask her to bless everyone you encounter or think about. You can ask her, beloved goddess, during the day or during the coming week, please act on your own wherever needed, even if I forget about you. People you meet will feel her blessing and wonder what happened to them. You can strengthen this activity by saying her mantra or by saying silently, I am Violet Tara in action here and now. When I drive into town, I say that. I park in the middle of town and say, I am the Violet Tara in action in this town. When I go to the post office or the health food store, I say, I am Violet Tara in action here, residing above this place and sending rays of violet light down into it, fully self-sustained even after my physical form leaves. She will then manifest and radiate the violet consuming flame to dissolve and consume disharmony and radiate love and forgiveness without any effort on your part. In the same way, you can also invoke Saint Germain, who is your elder brother, and is doing the same work with the violet flame on many planes of existence. He will be grateful for your help. Done regularly and with devotion, this practice will purify and raise not only you, but all of humanity. And I would conclude this meditation by saying a prayer of gratitude. We give thanks, O Tara, for your grace, guidance, and blessings. Please help us remember you. Be with us always. We thank you. You can feel that we are not the same now as we were 45 minutes ago. And I'm very pleased to discover many people are doing this practice that have read the book. And I was very pleased to hear that in this county of California, Siskiyou County, which is actually bigger than the state of Connecticut and Rhode Island combined, there have been no fatalities from this virus that is prevalent around. And there have been very few cases of it. And I am going to attribute that to the activity of Violet Tara. And also, there are many students of Saint Germain here who I know are invoking the violet consuming flame in their own way. All this has an effect. So do not underestimate the power of your consciousness. So there's really no limit to what we can do. It's so easy to get tied into the negative thought forms, which the Tibetan Buddhists would see as various demons. You see their negative thought forms also. But the one way to get rid of them is to invoke the positive ones. So the violet Tara is one of them. You can call forth also the white Tara, green Tara, red Tara, so on, as well as your own I am presence. That's why your own meditation is so important. So I try to limit my intake of news, because after you read the news for a while and all of the horrible things, you find yourself pulled down or getting into a negative state. So I try to clear that with meditation, with doing violet Tara practice. Also, I use the affirmations in my book, I Am Affirmations and the Secret of Their Effective Use, which you can download. You can download all these books from my website, which is iamteachings.com, with hyphens between those words. And you can get them from Amazon also. So there's about 20 minutes worth of affirmations in there. If you just read them straight through, it completely reprograms your mind to think positively, to have a positive attitude, and that calls forth the light it calls forth the light in your mind, in your body, in your feelings, and in your whole world. Then you become a transmitter of goodness to not only the people you meet. Well, right now you're probably not meeting a lot of people because you're sheltering at home, but there are people that know you and you're connected with them mentally. We're all really connected on the internet, not the internet, the internet. So we can all send positive thoughts and feelings to each other from our hearts. Call on Violet Tara to come forth for all world leaders. In addition to Violet Tara, call on Archangel Michael to purify all beings of power on the earth, all political leaders, all economic leaders, all banking leaders. Archangel Michael, we call on you to put them on the cross of blue flame, cut them free from all delusion. Have them drop anything that is not beneficial to humanity. And beloved Jesus and Mary, great host of ascended masters, all the archangels, we call on you to perfect humanity and establish the divine plan on earth by the power of God that I am in action right now. That is my own way of saying it. You can all say it in your own way, but you can feel it. So Saint Germain is saying, do it, do it, do it, you know? So I'm not going to give a long-winded talk here, but maybe some people have questions they would like to ask, or At the end of the book, the second Violet Tara book, I Am Violet Tara in Action, there are a lot of stories of people applying the Violet Tara in their own lives and the experiences they've had, letting go of doubt, blame, feelings of inadequacy. The Violet Tara dissolves those. So, and that book came about. There were 10 webinars that I gave on Violet Tara. And that became the book, I Am Violet Tara in Action. And there are questions and answers in the book, and there are more affirmations that you can do to call the violet flame into action. So I see everybody is radiant here and glowing. Are there any questions? Again, you could.
Peter, I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Kathleen. I'm glad to hear that Thomas and Christine are friends of yours. They're such sweet people.
They're wonderful people.
You talked of a concept, you invoked this, and I wasn't quite sure when you said go into your non-conceptual self-awareness. What does that mean? Does that mean your physicalness, or does that, what is that?
I'm glad you brought that up, because a friend of mine, he used to live in Mount Shasta, Roma Rishi Ganganath. He's starting an organization. It might be in the Himalayas, but it's going to be called Mahamudra. And I said to him, I've been hearing this from Tibetan lamas for 50 years, and I've done research on it. I could never really figure out what it is. And he sent me back a reply that it's like the non-conceptual awareness. When you stop thinking, the state that you're in, the mindfulness. So we're so identified with our thoughts, we think we are our thoughts, or we think we are who we think we are. What happens when you not only stop identifying with your thoughts, but stop the thoughts entirely? You realize then that you are this vast consciousness without limit. Like, that is the grain of salt merging in the ocean of awareness. So when your individual ego dissolves and you realize you are this vast, unlimited consciousness. So that would be actually Mahamudra, or what I said, this, non-conceptual awareness. Well, many people are striving to attain that. And some yogis, they will sit in the cave or sit in the mountains, maybe sit in that 23 hours out of the day. When you're in that, you don't need to eat. You don't need, in fact, hardly even breathe. I'm just saying, when you go into that awareness, you receive your nourishment direct from the higher planes of consciousness. Now, I entered into that awareness sort of accidentally one time. When you get out of identifying with your thoughts, you realize who you truly are, that you are the mind of God. God is not some old guy in a cloud. God is you. But you have to let go of the limiting thoughts and identification with the ego. And then you realize you are that vast, vast being that exists beyond the earth, beyond this universe. You are eternal, unlimited consciousness that has always been and will always be, and that exists in a state of absolute bliss. So it's very tempting to want to go into that, and that's the subject of Advaita, which is getting into that oneness. But I would like to throw out a thought that being in that is not actually mastery. we were in that consciousness before we took on these bodies. So I asked myself, I was there, now I'm here. I have an ego, a personality, a body. I see duality. But mastery is learning to accept those things and be in the world of duality, but be master over them. Like, what if you get into a taxi and the taxi driver says, I'm a student of Advaita, of the oneness. I don't see duality. I don't see good and evil. I don't see left and right. I'm going to say, well, I'm going to take another taxi. I want a taxi driver that can see the left side of the road and the right side of the road. So then the taxi driver would say, well, I can see left and right, but I'm an Advaita student, so I like to hang out in the oneness. But mastery is saying there is a left and right, and I'm going to drive on the right side of the road and pay attention, and I'm not going to get angry at people that cut me off. There's the mastery. Or if I'm in a relationship, am I going to say my partner doesn't exist? My partner is a part of me? I mean, you can think that all you want until your partner shouts at you, and then you say, wait a minute, maybe there's something I need to learn here. So that is mastery. Mastery is beyond the oneness. Eventually we will return to the oneness, but right now we have this dream of duality where there's good and evil. And it's from that good and evil that we're all learning, right and wrong, up and down, health and sickness, so on. They're all lessons for us to become masters. So we have to say, we chose to be born at this time, and what is happening on earth right now is part of the drama we signed up for. So how can I be an actor in this and not get pulled down by it, and in fact, be an actor for good? How can I help others to wake up and to escape the suffering? And I guarantee you, if we can do this and stay in a state of joy, we will go on into the higher frequency of the new age. Those who choose the lower frequency will have to get their lessons there, but we can all choose the higher frequency of enlightened self-awareness and mastery. And we have at every moment the choice what to put our attention on. So instead of waiting for the kingdom of heaven, I can say, I am moving now into the kingdom of heaven. I am enlightened self-awareness. I am working on being the master right here now. And I can feel joy even being shut in here. This is like, it's forcing everyone to be yogis. And I have to say, just giving this talk, this is the best I've felt all day, because I am trying to give and bring through this consciousness to help others, and it's raising me in the process. So we can all do this in our own way. Well, Kathleen, that was a long-winded explanation, the answer to your question, but I don't know if I answered it or not. It's something you realize in meditation, your unlimited self. But it's out of that unlimited self that the goddess, that the violet Tara comes forth.
Deborah, do you have a question?
No.
Oh, you suddenly got unmuted. Okay, I'll mute.
Maybe somebody has an answer. Well, so I would like to say, just try it out. And you learn by doing, don't take my word for it, just see what happens. I am Violet Tara in action. And Or maybe if somebody's sick, maybe you want to call forth green Tara. White Tara is the goddess of youthfulness and longevity. You can call her forth. But this talk is about the violet Tara because she's new, you know, she's not been talked about. Now, here's something very interesting. I thought that I was the first one to write about violet Tara. And I was sure a lot of people were going to say, oh, this is another one of those Mount Shasta crackpots that's cooking up new stuff all the time, you know, inventing new beings and so on. Then somebody sent me the photocopy of a book, what was a translation of a book by Thomas Cleary. The book was written 1,000 years ago in China. And it was something like the Immortal Sisterhood. So, you know, there were very patriarchal times then in China at that time. And the women were pretty much kept at home. The men were out there fighting over who gets to sit on the throne and who would make more money and so on. So the women actually worked on themselves spiritually and ascended. They became great saints and became enlightened and had the power to work miracles. So it was kind of, even though they may have resented the patriarchy, they used that sort of imprisonment to become masters. And one of the masters they talk about was called Goddess of the Violet Mist. So I see that as another name for Violet Tara. I think that's beautiful, the Goddess of the Violet Mist. So they talked about her, and she was one of their patrons. She helped them to ascend. There's kind of a funny story in that book. There was one of the husbands of these women, you know, he was trying to be macho. She wanted to go into town. There were some homeless people she wanted to help. And he said, I forbid you to leave the house. And he locked the door. Well, she opened the window and flew out the window. She could levitate, transport her physical body into town, help these people that were homeless, fed them, healed them, whatever, then flew back in the window later. That kind of put him in his place. You know, he learned not to try to control her anymore. But so I was very pleased to see that the Chinese talked about these beings 1,000 years ago. It's kind of a shame that communism has suppressed all that stuff, but it's there, it's in the mass consciousness. So I was happy to see that this was not just something of the moment. Although Saint Germain told me to write about it, I had the feeling I was the only one that had ever written about it, because there are no other books I know of now that talk about it. But here was one written 1,000 years ago, that this is not some new thing, that the violet Tara is an aspect of yourself, an aspect of consciousness, as are these other goddesses, as are the ascended masters. Although there was a being Jesus and Mary and so on, and Kuan Yin and all these masters. Some of them are Yidams. In other words, they're aspects of consciousness that never were born in the physical. Others were born, like we know Saint Germain was a historical person, but he too represents an aspect of ourselves. He is the master, the Chohan of the seventh ray. So, which is actually God consciousness in action as a master. Yes, Hans.
Peter, I want to tell you something.
Oh.
This is Boyd.
Boyd, hi Boyd. Yeah.
Hi. Hey, just want to really thank you for bringing this up. The idea of a Yidam, like you say, you know, I've been aware of it. like you gave the example of the Dhyani Buddhists, they've never taken incarnation, and it kind of, in some respects, it's a little bit confusing to us who because we have spent so much time, in incarnation, and we've also been habituated to considering these lists of masters that we know of who also took incarnation, and so they're a little bit of a curiosity. And yet I have to honestly tell you, when we were doing these exercises together, I really did experience this being. I really did. So just wanted to tell you, I really, really, really did experience this being, and it's awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Boyd. Thank you for sharing that. I'll give you an example of a Yidam probably most of you experienced as children, and that is Santa Claus. Santa Claus is pretty much created by Madison Avenue as an advertising tool to get people to buy lots of stuff. Santa Claus was an amalgam of certain Scandinavian myths combined with some Catholic, like Saint Nicholas, who was a historical person. And then you have various other myths or stories or legends. The Laplanders, they used to eat these magic mushrooms, and they had this vision of reindeer flying in the sky because the reindeer came through. And so they saw the reindeer eating these mushrooms, so they ate them too. And they had these hallucinatory trips where they saw the reindeer flying in the sky. So you have this whole story the night before Christmas where you have Santa Claus, who's now a heavy-set guy in a red outfit, very jolly, and his sleigh is being led by reindeer. Well, a number of stories all came together. But as a child, I grew up hearing this, and my mother said, make a list to give to Santa. Santa knows if you've been good or bad. He's watching you all the time. Well, isn't that what God does? I mean, God is watching, or Jesus is watching you, whatever. Well, my parents didn't believe in Jesus. They weren't religious people. But they told me this thing about Santa Claus, and everyone else seemed into it. So I said, doesn't hurt to try it. So I prayed to Santa Claus, and I put a list of the stuff I wanted out for Santa. I put out a glass of milk and some cookies for him, which you could say that's a tantric ritual. And lo and behold, the things I asked for on my list were there in the morning. So I started to believe more and more in Santa Claus, especially like the month before Christmas. During the summer, I wasn't thinking of him. But, in the beginning of December, I was definitely thinking, and I was on my best behavior because Santa's watching me. And it worked very well for us. So Santa Claus is what we call a Yidam. It's an aspect of God. And it wasn't until later when some of my friends started saying, you don't believe in Santa Claus still, do you? And I went, well, no, I guess not. And then I told my mother, you can forget this whole Santa thing. I know it's a myth, it's not true. But as long as I believed in it, it worked. So that's a perfect example of a Yidam. It became quite real for me.
Maybe you could create a Yidam of your own, just name it. And it's a being that basically gives you everything that you would like every day of the year, not just Christmas. And, it would be an aspect of God and an aspect of you, and it would really aid your alchemy, right?
Yeah. Well, that's who Lakshmi is. It's the Hindu goddess Lakshmi.
Exactly. Yes.
She's the goddess of abundance.
A name. Exactly.
Pictures of her, she's radiating gold coins. Now, she's not just the goddess of material abundance, but emotional abundance of love and good feeling. She's the one that makes you feel good. So I know many people pray to Lakshmi, and she's a real force in their lives. She has actually become a living, breathing being that you can invoke. That's like the mass consciousness of millions of people focused on her over thousands of years have created her as a real being, you know? I had a dramatic experience with Lakshmi. I was visiting some friends in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they had a big tapestry of Lakshmi on the wall. And I guess about half a dozen of us went into the shrine room, and I heard inside, at this time I was low on funds, and I heard a voice say, bow down to Lakshmi, or she actually said, bow down to me. So even though the room was full of Indian people, I was the only one to bow down. I bowed down, I prostrated to her on my hands and knees, and I felt a hand on my head. I felt a woman's hand. I thought one of the women in the room had put her hand on my head, but I looked up, they were all standing to the side. And so I had prayed to her, Lakshmi, I really need some help. I'm low on funds here. I would appreciate it, you know? And the next day, a friend took me to a cafe in Fremont. And after we left, we were walking through the parking lot, which was dirt, you know, and there was broken glass in the dirt. And I looked down, there was something sparkling in the dirt, rainbow colors coming out. I picked it up and it was a diamond. And I heard then Lakshmi say, you wanted abundance, you know, this is the beginning. And then the very next day, someone gave me a check for a large amount of money. And I felt this was definitely the grace of Lakshmi. Of course, I could receive this because I opened up my consciousness to Lakshmi as an aspect of divinity. But that required me to open my consciousness and accept that. So Violet Tara is the same. The more you accept her and call on her and work with her, the more she will bring blessings into your life. You know, I even have a little ritual here. I got this in Ashland. I don't know if you can see. It's a violet goblet and a violet vase. And I have a little amethyst I got. You don't need all of this stuff. I got this amethyst at Soul Connections, I think for $2 or something. So you can take a glass of water and say, I call on Saint Germain to empower this amethyst with the violet fire. And may from now on, may I be empowered as an emissary of Violet Tara. And may this water be charged with life-giving healing essence. And you drop the amethyst in the water. Let it sit overnight or put it in the sun. Then the next day, you drink it thinking, I am drinking liquid violet fire. This can be very powerful. So this relies on my consciousness. If a robot came along and dropped the amethyst in there, nothing would happen. But it's because I'm invoking it. It's empowered with my own consciousness. And each of us is a God being, so there's no limit to what we can achieve. Right, Hans? Yeah. Important. Let us all give thanks to the Mother, the Divine Mother, our own mothers, our mothers' mothers, all mothers, mothers of all the animals, the Mother Nature, Mother Earth. None of us would be here without the Mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's something very sacred, and it's really appropriate to talk about Tara on Mother's Day because Tara is an aspect of the Mother. In fact, you have Tara right next to you. She used the name Tahira, but that's very close to Tara, right? we all need to get, the men need to get in touch with the mother within, you know. So, you know, this is a perfect opportunity to do that. But I keep using it more and more. Like when I get in the bathtub, sometimes I take a bath, I ask Violet Tar to charge the bathtub. And I just visualize the water is violet liquid, you know, bubbling and stuff. And I close my eyes and I get in and I just imagine any negative energy, any toxins are being removed from my body. It's all going down the drain. There are all kinds of different beings you can call on. I like, you know, the world situation to call on Archangel Michael and the sword of blue flame to really eliminate any negative activity happening. And of course, I'm asking Saint Germain also all the time, you know, and the great divine director. When I see some of these beings that the Saint Germain Foundation has, I used to think that they were Yidams. What it says in some of the books, these are not their real names. It's just their office, like the great divine director. That was not his, you know, like inner name. We don't know what that was or is, but his function is to emanate the directing intelligence. And I saw him once, and it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. He had these sapphires hanging from his waist, hanging down. And I could not look him in the face. The energy was so powerful. And so when I wake up in the morning now, but he inspires you to manifest that consciousness of the great divine director. So you can say, I am the great divine director of my life. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, I look up at my I am presence. I don't usually see it, but I know that there's a ball of light above me emanating rainbow colors. And you could not take a breath without that being. It's sending a tube of light down through the top of your head, and it's making your heart beat. It's keeping you alive while you're asleep. Oh, and I say, I am the great divine director of my day. And I don't usually hear anything like do this or do that. I just wake up and put one foot in front of the other and follow my heart, and the day unfolds perfectly. Then at the end of the day, I said, wow, I was really busy today. Everything was just flowing perfectly, but that was the great divine director, you know? So I invoke the great divine director for the whole earth. I am the great divine director of humanity. And you imagine this being wearing a white robe with these sapphires hanging down, giving orders, you know, directing, you go here, you do that, and surrounded by all the masters, you know, directing what's going on, you know. And also the angels and the archangels, in addition to Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Metatron, so on, Zadkiel, Uriel, all of them, call them forth into action. Yeah, you can get really high doing this, I'm going to tell you. We are all God in action at every moment. So let's be conscious of what it is we want to create. You know, so Russia, called Saint Seraphim, and in the monastery, during prayers, they had to tie him down because he would start floating. So the message is think light thoughts and you will be light, you know?
Oh, true. Well, thank you. Thank you, Peter, so much for being with us.